Hi, I'm Jess McGuire, and I am the Working Lands for Wildlife Bobwhite Quail Coordinator for Quail Forever. We are a nonprofit that works with a lot of partners to get habitat management on the ground and ultimately preserve the upland habitat in which we're all working. So prescribed fire doesn't need to be difficult, but it needs to be safe. And if you have any hesitations in implementing prescribed fire on your property, especially for wildlife, we have a network of people that are available to give you guidance and people to even help you initiate that burn on your property. It's important that we're all working together to get this habitat on the ground for wildlife. And even if you're not interested in quail specifically, these practices help a suite of wildlife, including deer, turkey, pollinators. What's important is that we are using fire safely and we're implementing it to increase the groceries on the ground for wildlife. So in 2016, a number of states banded together with NRCS to work on what we consider 2.0 species, and the bobwhite quail was one of those species. This will benefit the upland. And what does that mean to you? It means that there are additional resources available for practices that benefit upland habitat and quail, such as prescribed fire, thinning and burning, and brush management, so you can get rid of those invasives that you are sick of looking at and get better fire across the ground as well. One of our favorite animals that goes along well with quail is the gopher tortoise, and fire is critical for the survival of the gopher tortoise. The gopher tortoise is considered a keystone species on which over 300 species rely on their burrow for habitat throughout the year. One of our mentors used to like to call the gopher tortoise burrow an air raid shelter for quail, and that's truly what it is for a lot of different species. Our model is to keep funds local, so with the chapters, we fundraise just like other wildlife NGOs that you might be familiar with, but our money stays with that local chapter, and that chapter can decide what projects that money is going to be spent on. Some decide to just spend it on shooting sports. Some like to implement their funds on wildlife management areas, and they'll pay for the contractors to burn or to do the timber stand improvement or brush management. So we're trying to work closely with our volunteers and help them really be invested in the habitat that surrounds the communities where they live and work, and that also helps us get the message out as well. Most advocates for fire, we have a lot of chapters that have funded burn trailers. So we're really trying to get out there and help bring the community together and put those funds towards building habitat. So we recently helped with a small landowner that had inherited the property and hadn't really paid attention much to what had happened when he was growing up. He knew he wasn't hearing the whistle anymore, but he wasn't really sure why. So that's when our biologists went in, they came up with a plan for him with the help of the local state agency as well. They also got the help of the local forestry commission to help with the burn plan and to also come up with a thinning program for that property. Just 2 years later, after thinning, they're able to get fire pushed through the landscape in smaller blocks, and those smaller blocks is helping that landowner feel safer in implementing those burns, which he now does on his own. And also it helps maintain that habitat connectivity. He's a small landowner in the midst of huge tracts of land that he didn't think he could contribute much with his small piece of land, but he really is. Now that he's implementing the recommendations from wildlife biologists and foresters, in just 2 years, the birds are back on his property thanks to his efforts and partnerships. So we have a lot of concerns from landowners that just haven't put fire on the landscape in years. They might remember their grandparents burning the farm, but they've moved away. They were never heavily involved, and now they're seeing that the only way that they can get it back to how they remembered and affordably is to burn and to implement fire on their property. So that's where we're all working together to try to pair up those landowners with the appropriate staff to come together and help them achieve what they want to achieve. Quail Forever biologists can help guide landowners towards incentives, technical assistance, and cost share opportunities with partners such as the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, Georgia Forestry Commission, and NRCS. The number one reason we've lost wildlife across our landscape, including species such as the northern bobwhite, gopher tortoise, and indigo snake, is directly due to habitat loss. Some of this habitat loss we can't mitigate anymore because there are buildings and pavement, but there is a lot of land that we can work on and we can improve to bring habitat connectivity back across the landscape and bring these species back into view. So a lot of people think, when they think about wildlife, they're thinking we need to be focused on the field borders or pine stands, but really habitat connectivity only works if you have a whole landscape plan for your property. This might mean you're burning through your wetlands right down to that creek bottom, or you're burning through a field that you might graze. This is where working with a wildlife habitat professional can help you plan those areas, plan your entire farm, and take into consideration your neighbors' practices and maybe even get them on board in the process.